전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
Gyeongju, a city that holds 1,000 years of history. The cherished values preserved over time have shaped who we are today. Now, through new encounters, we step into a better future. Sustainability, innovation. With the spirit of connection, a new millennium story begins. As APEC and Gyeongju come together, APEC meets Gyeongju.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
In our headlines on this Thursday, October 30th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae Myung holds a series of sideline summits on the margins of the APEC leaders meeting in the historic city of Gyeongju, starting with his Canadian counterpart this morning and ending with his Japanese counterpart this evening. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping meet in the southern port city of Busan for talks today to calm fears over trade tensions between the two countries, with Washington slashing some tariffs and Beijing committing to rare earth exports. And in the city of Gyeongju at the APEC CEO Summit, corporate heavyweights, industry experts and government officials agree no tangible progress can be made in the absence of tangible cooperation. Hello and welcome to our evening newscast for this Thursday, October 30th. I'm Min San-hee. Starting today until Saturday this week, that is November 1st, our newscast comes to you in a special format as we here at Arirang News share team coverage of South Korea's hosting of this year's APEC Forum. That being said, I turn now to our news center set up in the historic city of Gyeongju, where my colleague Kim Dami is standing by live. Dami, welcome.
Good evening, Sunny. I'm here at our KOSPI studio in Gyeongju. Now, I think it's bright enough to tell. I'm here right in front of Gyeongju's Hanbok International Convention Center. This is where the main event The APEC leaders meeting will take place from tomorrow. Now, first things first, we start our coverage with a flurry of diplomacy here in the city. Following the high-stakes ROK-U.S. summit yesterday, the leaders of South Korea and Japan sat down for talks this evening. We go live to our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min at the International Media Center. Jung-min, what is the latest?
Tommy, so it was the first time that President Lee Jae Myung met Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi. Their get-to-know session began with the leaders congratulating each other on their inaugurations and with the same message of future cooperation.
변하는 국제 정세 그리고 통상 환경 속에서 한국과 일본은 이웃 국가이자 공통점이 참으로 많은 나라입니다. 그래서 한일 양국이 그 어느 때보다 미래지향적인 협력을 강화해야 될 때라고 생각합니다.
I'm confident that it's good for both countries that we develop our relationship in a future-oriented and stable way. For that, I hope for good communication with you, Mr. President, through our shuttle diplomacy.
President Lee has been stressing the importance of maintaining the so-called shuttle diplomacy between Seoul and Tokyo and a diplomatic approach that separates thorny historical issues from future cooperation. The newly elected Japanese Prime Minister, who is known as an ultra-conservative, arrived in Korea this afternoon for a 3-day visit to attend the APEC leaders meeting.
All right, Jung-min, and on Thursday today, it was another day full of back-to-back meetings for the South Korean leader, Lee Jae Myung. Tell us more about today.
You're right, Tammy. So it was President Lee had a packed diplomatic schedule today. First, he sat down with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in the morning, calling Canada a key partner, as he noted the sacrifices of Canadian troops during the Korean War. Take a look.
캐나다는 대한민국에 있어서 단순한 우방국을 넘어서서 동맹에 준하는 핵심 우방 국가다.
We're meeting at a time when our defense cooperation is needed, and very importantly, that our cultural ties continue to grow.
In a joint statement, the two leaders announced the launch of the bilateral security and defense cooperation partnership, the first of its kind for Canada in the Indo-Pacific. The leaders also concluded negotiations on an agreement to share classified military information, setting a legal foundation for collaboration in defense procurement. He also held back-to-back meetings with the leaders from New Zealand, Thailand, Vietnam, and Australia to discuss key cooperation, including the economy, defense industry, and security. As for New Zealand, the leaders agreed to elevate the Korea-New Zealand relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. More summit diplomacy is scheduled for President Lee throughout this diplomatic super week, including his one-on-one with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Back to you, Dami.
All right, Jung-min, do keep us posted. That was our Yoon Jung-min live from the International Media Center. And following yesterday's ROK-U.S. summit, U.S. President Donald Trump this morning gave South Korea the green light to build nuclear-powered submarines. Our presidential office correspondent, Song Yoo-jin, has the details.
South Korea's presidential office says it welcomes U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to approve South Korea's building of nuclear-powered submarines.
This decision will help strengthen our national defense and significantly expand our military's leading role in safeguarding South Korea. We will work closely with the United States throughout the implementation process.
Early Thursday morning, President Trump posted on social media that he had, quote, given approval to build a nuclear-powered submarine, mentioning that the sub will be built in Philadelphia. This was one of the key proposals President Lee Jae Myung raised during his summit with President Trump on Wednesday.
연료 공급을 허용을 해주시면 저희가 저희 기술로 재래식 무기를 탑재한 잠수함을 여러 척 건조해서 우리 한반도 동해 서해에 해역 방어 활동을 하면 미군의 부담도 상당히 많이 줄어들 수 있을 것이다라는 생각이 듭니다.
Nuclear power submarines can stay submerged far longer and operate much more quietly than diesel powered ones, making them harder to detect. But under the current South Korea-U.S. nuclear cooperation agreement, Seoul is barred from using nuclear power for military purposes and from producing or importing highly enriched uranium, the fuel needed for such submarines. In this context, President Lee asked for his American counterpart to advance substantive discussions on revising the decades-old agreement.
South Korea's presidential office says the results of the summit, including key points from the security talks, will be released as a fact sheet. Attention now turns to what tangible results the summit will deliver, as the government has been stressing a mutually beneficial agreement that protects national interests. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스, 경주.
And APEC attention shifted to South Korea's port city of Busan earlier today, where U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping met to get down to their trade business. And the two leaders managed to reach a consensus. Our Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
The two leaders of the world's largest economies met each other for the first time in over 6 years. At Daremaru facility located within the Republic of Korea Air Force Base at Gimhae International Airport, the mega event of Trump-Xi meeting was held on Thursday, with the summit going on for around 100 minutes. During his opening remarks, President Trump praised Xi as a great leader and said the two countries will continue to have fantastic ties. Xi, in response, said that the two leading economies in the world having friction is normal, as each nation has different national conditions.
And we will be having some discussions. I think we've already agreed to a lot of things, and we'll agree to some more right now.
I always believe that China's development goes hand in hand with your vision to make America great again. Our two countries are fully able to help each other succeed and prosper together.
According to a short media briefing during his way back home aboard the Air Force One, Trump said the rare earth issue is settled. China reportedly decided to defer its export controls on rare earths for a year to avoid the tariffs that Trump has threatened to impose on Chinese goods. In response to Beijing agreeing to help the U.S. address the fentanyl problem, Washington agreed to reduce fentanyl-related tariffs Trump imposed from the current 20% to 10%. Trump also announced that China would immediately resume purchases of U.S. soybeans. While saying the meeting was a 12 on the scale from 0 to 10 and 10 being the best, Trump said he is to visit China in April next year, after which President Xi plans to visit either Palm Beach, Florida, or Washington, D.C. Regarding any meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Trump said he was too busy to have a chance to talk to him, as the purpose of the visit was talks with Xi, and that he intends to come back to see Kim again. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
So the one-year trade agreement that promises a postponement of export controls on rare earth metals appears to have brought the two leaders to the middle ground for now. But can we call this an end to the trade war? For answers here in the Gyeongju studio, I'm joined by Professor Andrew Millard. Hello, Professor Millard.
Good evening. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And also joining us is our foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young. Welcome, Soo-young.
Great to be here, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, I'd like to start with you. What did you make of the outcome of the Trump-Xi summit earlier today?
Well, this highly anticipated summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, I would say it rather fell below expectations. Maybe because the US leader had, for days and days, he'd been talking about what a great deal he was going to reach with President Xi Jinping. But this summit appeared to fall slightly short of that, as they did take a step back from weeks and weeks of trade war escalation. But it was only really that. There wasn't really much of a breakthrough, but it was a temporary pause or an extension of their trade truce, where, of course, as Bo-kyung mentioned in her report just now, they made some deals on fentanyl, tariffs being halved, and also China resuming its purchase of soybeans, but these weren't actual fundamental solutions to the wider trade war. They were rather domestically oriented, I would say. They were hot button items, but not really core trade issues. So it really seemed entirely political, their meeting. None of the leaders, neither of the two leaders, had much to gain by further escalating the trade war, especially with President Trump, facing the midterm elections in the US next year, and President Xi Jinping as well. He's looking to extend he's looking to go into the fourth term of him being in office. So they now have something to take back home with them. And of course, this being their first meeting since President Trump, he returned to office earlier this year in January. I would say it was more of a hello again kind of summit, build up to their later meetings, which will happen next year.
Maybe more than a hello, a strategically designed move for both leaders. Now, Professor Miller, then how would you evaluate the meeting between the leaders of the world's two largest economies? I mean, do you think it's the best that they were able to come up with?
So I think this was a very positive summit. So, I mean, we've been talking about this summit now for about a month. Will Xi come to Korea? Will Trump come to Korea? Will they have a meeting? So there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of talk. It's finally happened, and this has been a very positive first step, because for the past 8 or 9 months, there's been a lot of back and forth between China and the US on tariffs and other issues. So to have this meeting, to have them sit down together, shake hands, I think this is a very positive first step. I agree with Ms. O, maybe the substance wasn't fully there. So as Donald Trump said, it was a 12 out of 10. I personally disagree with that. I give it maybe 7 or 8 out of 10, because they do both have a lot of domestic issues, but this is also a very important issue for the global economy as well. So to have this meeting, have some steps forward, potentially Donald Trump will go to China next April, and then Xi will go to the US afterwards. So they're starting to rebuild this relationship.
I think the world wanted to see that. Well, then, Soo-young, I have to ask the ultimate question. Will the summit finally ease the trade tensions between US and China?
Well, I'm going to have to be the bad guy here and be a bit pessimistic, because this agreement on the rare minerals as well, China had initially threatened to impose export controls on the export of rare minerals that go into all the high-tech sort of technology that we see these days. And while it said that it would drop that trade measure, it's only going to last a year, and even President Trump, he acknowledged this by saying that they're going to have to renegotiate after a year. So I would say that this is just stage one of the Trump-Xi interaction. We're going to continue to see this trade war rage on. The battle for now is over, but there are going to be more battles. This first summit held in Korea, a third country, is just going to be a lead up to their more perhaps intensive meetings next year, when President Trump is set to go to China possibly in April, and Xi Jinping makes a reciprocal trip. So again, we see the US and China fundamentally, they're decoupling still. They're trying to reduce their reliance on each other when it comes to these very strategic industries and supplies of very critical, these substances that power everything from AI to, ships and all these high-tech digital things that we take for granted these days. So I would say that they have stepped back for now, but in the long run, are they going to really narrow their differences? Are they fundamentally going to resolve their trade war? That's a very tough question to answer, and as President Trump likes to say, we'll just have to wait and see.
That is a very big homework for the two leaders. Now, I have to turn to Professor Miller for this question. I have to ask on behalf of our viewers, then who gave in more, Trump or Xi? What's your take on it?
Oh, this is a good question. And to be honest, right now, there's no answer. This is a very early stage. So we have the agreement. It's not been signed. So this is a very important thing to remember. Everything can change. Until everything is signed and put in paper, in writing, it can still change. And we know Donald Trump, he's highly unpredictable. It could possibly change any minute, depending on what happens. But like I said, there's no real clear winner. Both sides have conceded, both have gained. So in terms of China, they've really gained sort of access to some of these sort of more advanced chips coming from America, not the most advanced, the Blackwell chip it's called, but they have gained more access to those chips. They have other advantages too. The US, basically agriculture, this has been a very big issue for American farmers. So soybeans are now going to be exported to China. They talk about tremendous amounts. How much is this tremendous amount? So again, the clarity right now is not there. The details we just don't have. So until we get this in paper, until we start learning more, we aren't going to know. Now, Donald Trump was very quick to be on social media as soon as the meeting finished and talking about all the gains that he's made. China was a little bit more relaxed, but they're slowly starting to give us more information. It's going to take a little while to really fully understand.
You know, it is a verbal agreement, and still details do have to be fine-tuned. Now, Soo-young, then how has South Korea been affected by this ongoing, the U.S.-China trade war? Do give us a recap.
Well, South Korea being a highly trade-dependent nation, it's been very vulnerable to all the ups and downs of the US-China trade war. And so if we just focus on this month alone in October, well, since September actually, when trade tensions began escalating again between Washington and Beijing, Korea's tech firms were seriously unnerved because they overly depend on China's supplies of rare minerals and rare earth supplies. And actually Korea, according to the Korea Institute for Economic Cooperation, Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, South Korea in 2018, around 17.3% of its critical mineral supplies came from China, but that rose sharply in 2023 to 31.7%, and that actually fell last year to around 24.2%, but that's still 1/4 of our critical minerals. And compared to the US, we are 5 times more dependent than them on China's critical mineral supplies, and 3 times more when it comes to that of the European Union. So for South Korean firms, it's been a very scary time for them this past month, and now it's going to be a bit, they're now going to be, breathing a sigh of relief. But again, that's just for 1 year, right? There's going to be renegotiations. So fundamentally, they're going to need some long-term solutions for this.
You know, I asked this question because President Lee Jae Myung is set to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Saturday in 2 days. What does this Trump-Xi meeting mean for President Lee then?
Well, I would say that it's rather good news for President Lee because as US-China trade tensions have, for now, dissipated slightly, it gives President Xi less of a reason to ramp up pressure on South Korea. I mean, Beijing last month 2 weeks ago, decided to impose sanctions on 5 subsidiaries of Hana Ocean, which of course is helping America's project to rebuild its shipbuilding industry, right? And this was clearly a very geopolitical move by China in its great power rivalry with China, because, ships, the US hegemony really comes from its naval power, and China's really competing with that. So to see South Korea help the US, that's something that Beijing clearly couldn't condone. So as US-China tensions were rising, they decided to sanction these companies. And that's something I think President Lee certainly would raise with Beijing. I believe our foreign minister already has, and he'll have a greater kind of leverage to be able to bring this to the table, among other trade issues too, of course, because Beijing's economic sanctions on Korea, they don't just extend to shipbuilding for now, but since 2017, after South Korea decided to install US missile defense systems on the Korean Peninsula, yes, some economic and also cultural sanctions on Korean firms have been continuing to this day. So those are some key issues that President Lee will have to raise. And since US-China tensions for now have been lowered, he can actually focus on these South Korea-China issues.
Right. On top of the cultural ban, the THAAD, and other issues, among other issues, what else is at stake? Professor Millard, how do you expect the meeting to turn out on Saturday between President Lee Jae Myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping?
So I think there's going to be a lot at stake for Korea here. So it's definitely going to be a test for Lee Jae Myung. He's obviously already finished his meeting with the US president. That went very positively. So now he has to sort of swing and sort of change direction now towards China, make sure that he maintains a very positive relationship with China, which I think he's already been doing very well. There's again going to be several issues. Security is going to be one of the top issues, but also maintaining those economic relations, I think really is going to be the key. And also potentially it could be brought up that there has been a little bit of anti-Chinese sentiment in Korea. So if that comes up, how he sort of deals with that diplomatically, I think that'll be quite a big test for him.
Saturday is going to be an interesting day.
It's going to be very interesting for sure.
All right, Professor Miller, thank you so much for coming in tonight. We appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you.
And also our foreign affairs correspondent, Suyang, thank you so much for coming in and for your coverage.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Tammy.
And member economies of APEC are close to finalizing the so-called Gyeongju Declaration, the final document signed by the leaders as the outcome of their meetings in South Korea this week. This came in a joint press conference by Foreign Minister Jo Hyun and the Trade Minister Yeo Hang-gu on Thursday. The two ministers announced the results of ministerial consultations between the 21 member economies, saying that the joint leader statement is still being negotiated but almost ready. South Korea also plans to issue separate documents on AI and a framework on addressing demographic challenges. During the press conference, when asked about Trump's approval for South Korea's plan to attain nuclear-powered submarines, Jo said that the U.S. had indeed given the green light and that there will be a procedural discussions going forward. Now, in the meantime, here in Gyeongju, the APEC CEO Summit continues. And today, global tech giants, including Google, Microsoft, and TikTok, couldn't have stressed enough the need for global cooperation against the digital world. Our economic correspondent, Moon Ji-young, reports.
No significant progress can be made without robust cooperation. This message resonated throughout all sessions of the APEC CEO Summit Korea on Thursday, as global tech and business leaders convened to discuss critical issues facing the digital world. Microsoft emphasized that a critical aspect of artificial intelligence adoption is ensuring its opportunities reach the broadest possible population, which should require robust infrastructure investments alongside local company collaborations.
I think one of the things that we've been very conscious of is ensuring that we don't expand the digital divide. I think the lesson is really thinking about how do you create the most fairly inclusive areas to grow technology adoption, and that way society as a whole benefits.
He further underscored the vital role of public-private partnerships in preventing AI from widening the digital divide. Another tech giant, Google, also identified AI as a tool of potential.
AI is global. Our regulatory frameworks must be as well. By building on common international standards, we can mitigate risks without stifling innovation, creating the public trust necessary for widespread adoption. Success in the AI era will require all of us to work in partnership.
Social media giant TikTok also underscored that unlocking digital opportunities across the APEC region fundamentally requires trust-led growth.
At TikTok, we realize that trust cannot be assumed. It must be earned every single day through our actions, our transparency, and our partnerships. Building a digital ecosystem that people feel safe to participate in requires more than just policy statements. It demands consistent investment, collaboration with local experts, and product design that is grounded in user well-being.
He also cited K-culture as a powerful example, driving massive commerce with K-pop, food, drama, and beauty trends thriving on TikTok. What these global tech leaders underscored wasn't just advanced tech, but the importance of a sustainable, responsible, and future-oriented digital ecosystem. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
And as Gyeongju hosts this year's APEC event, the spirit of cooperation continues. This time from Peru, the previous host. Our correspondent Park Kwon sat down with the delegation head of Peru for APEC this year to hear lessons learned and the value of keeping the connection going.
At this year's APEC in Gyeongju, Peru, the host of last year's event, is taking part despite the ongoing political instability at home. The country's Minister of Foreign Trade and Tourism, Teresa Mera, who is leading the APEC delegation in place of the president, says it was crucial to travel all the way to Gyeongju.
The situation is going on under the margins of our constitution. We continue in a sustainable manner our national policy to open our country to the world. In that sense, APEC fora is very important for us. This is a fora where allow us to participate along the side of the most dynamic economies around the world.
Having hosted APEC 3 times, she said many agreements were made among members during the previous events. Trade and exchanges with Korea were facilitated even further.
I want to pinpoint the relationship and exchanges between Korea and Peru. Since last year's APEC, what kind of relationships or partnerships have grown ever since in terms of trade, cultural ties, and even tourism?
Korea became the fourth economy in Asia for us. Our trade was got the $2 billion. We are increasing our export to Korea on textiles, not only agricultural products, and also in hydrocarbons. Importing from Korea heavy metals, heavy manufacturers.
And not just heavy materials, but soft ones too.
Beauty shops, more and more you can find Korean products. And also in the media, the influencers are talking more and more about the benefits of Korean beauty products. I use masks for hands, feet, and also the face indeed. I have my selection for sure.
While she says she's faced challenges in terms of diversifying cooperation, the minister says she hopes to broaden cooperation with Korea, especially as the two countries mark the 15th anniversary of their free trade agreement next year.
We are working very closely with Korea in cooperation activities regarding trade facilitation, customs. You have a big experience on that. In particular, in the digitalization of these services that are very important because in trade. So we receive cooperation from Korea to develop and implement procedures in our customs authorities and also free trade zones.
And with that in mind, more fruitful outcomes are expected through the APEC meeting.
But there's still a strong commitment from the Korean authorities to still working regarding trade facilitation and also all these technologic aspects. You are a great provider, you are much more advanced than others from Korea. Continue moving forward this agenda that is very important for us because in a more integrated trade.
Okay, Minister Teresa, muchas gracias once again for today's interview.
Gracias a ti. Thank you.
Park Kwon, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
With the Asia-Pacific as a region aging rapidly, major demographic shifts are occurring, which is why this year's APEC calls for greater joint action on biotechnology and healthcare innovation. And today we've invited a distinguished guest from one of the firms that is taking tangible actions in the field. He is Mr. Kevin Zhu, chairman of MEBO Group and former chair of the APEC host committee. Welcome, Mr. Zhu.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Please do introduce yourself and the MEBO Group to us.
Yes. Well, my name is Kevin Zhu. I'm the former chair of the APEC host committee and also the CEO of MEBO Group. We focus on clinical trial and also training clinical workforce around the world, especially in Asia-Pacific area. But also in the meantime, we focus on how to assist other APEC economy to fully transition from a new digital era by the clinical study and also the practical challenges.
Well, I hear MEBO Group's been a strategic partner of APEC. Walk us through how that's happened and why APEC needs MEBO as a partner.
Well, I would say because through our experience by working with APEC economies over the last 35 years, we realized there is desynchronizations among different economies when they accepting new digital technology that integrating with their current healthcare system. And that time we have to figure out a way to help lower the bar, but also bridging the gaps. So we can make sure we're creating a new APEC ecosystem that can not only be facilitating others, but also creating a unification of accepting new healthcare system. And that's why I'm here today at the CEO Summit and talk about this transition.
Right. Well, today, I do have to remind you, this year's APEC's the theme is building a sustainable tomorrow. Among the common goals, what goals are you aiming for? I mean, what is MEBO really aiming to contribute to?
Well, I would say, especially starting in 2023, I believe APEC is a platform built not only for trade and development, is also for the future generation. So when we talk about sustainability, we talk about how we can create a much prosperous future for our younger generation and also the world to accepting new technology and also emergence of new technologies. And because of that, I mean, our goal is to creating a methodology, a way of accepting new technology that integrating with all the economies.
Well, Mr. Zhu, MEBO Group is well recognized for its regenerative medicine and wound care projects. I do have to ask, what contributions is MEBO really making within the APEC framework to really narrow the medical disparities in the Asia Pacific?
Well, I would say because our past experience working with APEC economies, we understand there's always differences and diversities among clinical practice, especially in different regions of APEC economies. And what we usually do is we do a lot of briefings by calling to action among the leaders in the academic field and also the leaders in the clinical practice field to find a way to creating a, what we call one wound, one care kind of a methodology that easily can be transitioned to the next generation of academic practitioners and also leaders and doctors.
Well, Mr. Zhu, I can tell that MEBO has a lot to offer within the APEC framework and also as a strategic partner of APEC. Then how is MEBO really collaborating or working with South Korea or the South Korean markets?
Well, I mean, one of the key here is really when we talk about APEC, we talk about what we can bring to the APEC, not only focus on what we already have.
Exactly.
Right? And when we talk about when having APEC in Korea, what's special in Korea? And especially during the first day of the CEO Summit, we talk about, for example, culture. How to bring people together by the K-pop culture. That's one of our missions. And besides I serve as the CEO of MEBO, also I serve as the owner of the U.S. magazine paper, which we specialize in focus on creating the most advanced entertainment and also culture flow. So when we talk about that, this is the moment, I think, for APEC that we bring the best and the positivities to the younger generation, not only in Korea, but to the world. So especially tonight, we actually have our own event that we bring the singer of the current K-pop Demon Hunter to perform at our event as a side event of the CEO Summit of APEC.
Wonderful. Mr. Zhu, thank you so much for coming into our studio tonight. I hope Gyeongju treats you well during your Asia trip.
Thank you very much.
And during the APEC week, Gyeongju is once again proving that tradition never fails. Rather, it transforms. A dazzling Hanbok fashion show brought Korea's culture beauty to the world stage. Our Park Hyo-bin has more.
Under the glow of nine lights, models in Hanbok, Korea's traditional attire, brought the country's timeless elegance to life. Gyeongju, the ancient city of Silla, once again shines as Korea's capital of culture. Ahead of APEC 2025 Korea, a Hanbok fashion show was held on Wednesday evening on a floating stage over Gyeongju Bridge in Gyeongju.
It's my first time seeing a Hanbok fashion show in person. My kids really enjoyed it too. I realized how beautiful Hanbok can be. It was a refreshing and joyful experience.
Set against the backdrop of the Silla-era bridge connecting the royal palace and the city gates, the runway was designed in the shape of the Korean letter Hyut. The show featured 5 symbols of Korean heritage: Korean traditional clothes, architecture, food, paper, and the alphabet with advanced technology.
This show stands out from traditional ones. Its theme is Inheriting Tradition, Flying with Technology. It features royal Silla costumes, APEC commemorative Hanbok, AI-designed pieces, and drone displays showing a new future for Hanbok culture.
The event was attended by South Korea's First Lady Kim Hae-kyung, the spouse of Canada's Prime Minister, and other distinguished guests from home and abroad, as well as locals. The world put the spotlight on Hanbok, sharing the beauty of Korea's tradition with the global audiences.
Gyeongsangbuk-do province is home to materials like silk and rami that have long supported Korea's hanbok industry. We hope to share this cultural legacy with the world.
Linking past and present, Hanbok is a living symbol of Korea's cultural spirit and evolving identity.
The Hanbok Fashion Show brought together Korea's timeless heritage with cutting-edge technology. It's also a stage for cultural diplomacy, sharing the beauty of tradition with the world. Park Hyubin, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
And that is all we have from Gyeongju tonight, the host city of APEC 2025 Korea. But Sunny over in Seoul, the Arirang crew in Gyeongju will be back with more coverage of the event first thing in the morning at 10:25 a.m. Korea Standard Time. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Tami, thank you for that. We look forward to that next coverage. Here in Seoul, we return to our regular lineup of local and international headlines. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to lower its benchmark interest rate by another 25 basis points. Our Lee Jae reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve announced a quarter-point interest rate cut on Wednesday, marking a divided decision among policymakers. The move lowers the federal funds rate to a range of 3.75 to 4.00% and comes as the central bank works to ease concerns over tightening liquidity in money markets.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a quarter percentage point.
However, with a 10-2 vote, the decision was not unanimous. 2 members dissented: Governor Stephen Moran, who pushed for a larger reduction to support slowing growth, and Kansas City Fed President Jeffrey Schmidt, who opposed any cut, citing ongoing inflation risks. The split highlights growing divisions within the central bank as it navigates an uncertain economic outlook. Speaking after the meeting, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell acknowledged the sharp differences within the committee. He cautioned that while some members favor additional easing, others want to pause. The Fed chair also noted that another rate cut in December is still uncertain.
In the committee's discussions at this meeting, there were strongly differing views about how to proceed in December. A further reduction in the policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion. Far from it. Policy is not on a preset course.
With the Bank of Korea freezing its rates earlier this month, the gap between the 2 central banks' rates now stands at 1.25 to 1.50%. Lee Jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the local bourse, the benchmark KOSPI opened its session sharply higher on this Thursday, surging past the 4,100 mark for the first time during early trade. The rally followed news of a broad trade consensus between Seoul and Washington and news of the Federal Reserve's second rate cut. The index, however, closed the day almost flat at 4,086.89 amid mixed reactions to the U.S.-China summit. The KOSDAQ, meanwhile, started strong at over 900 that is, and 3, but ended the day down at 890.86. In other news, a South Korean court has ordered K-pop girl group NewJeans to honor its contract with its record label, ADOR. Our Jin has details.
A South Korean court on Thursday ruled that the exclusive contract that K-pop girl group NewJeans signed with agency ADOR remains valid. This means the group has lost the lawsuit, as ADOR had sued to confirm the validity of the exclusive contract. The court found insufficient grounds to support NewJeans' key claims for termination, which was that the dismissal of former CEO Min Hee-jin was a violation. The court added that the fact that Min was removed from her position as CEO does not in itself mean that a managerial vacuum was created or that ADOR became incapable of fulfilling its contractual obligations, which runs until 2029. The dispute between NewJeans and ADOR began in November 2024 when the group abruptly held a press conference announcing the termination of their exclusive contract. The label responded in December by filing a lawsuit seeking confirmation of contract validity. A dispute had arisen in August of last year when HYBE, the parent company of ADOR, allegedly forced out NewJeans' mentor Min Hee-jin. The court discovered that ADOR had offered Min a revised contract valid for the remainder of her term, but it was Min who voluntarily resigned from her position as an internal director. ADOR also requested injunctions to prevent the members of NewJeans from pursuing independent activities or entering advertisement contracts without the agency's consent until the court came to a ruling, which the court accepted in March of 2025, effectively halting the group's activities altogether. The legal firm representing NewJeans stated that while the members respect the court's judgment, it was now impossible for them to return and continue normal activities under the agency, as their relationship and trust with ADOR has been completely destroyed. The firm also added that NewJeans plans to immediately file an appeal for Thursday's court ruling. Jin, Arirang News.
Cool autumn weather is welcoming tomorrow's APEC 2025 in Gyeongju already. It rose to 19 degrees Celsius in the middle of the day. These typical autumn conditions will continue tomorrow and Saturday with the average temperatures for this time of year. However, the skies will be mostly cloudy. With a chilly morning at 7.7 degrees in Seoul, the temperature rose by more than 10 degrees during the day. A large daily temperature difference between day and night will continue nationwide, so please dress warm when you go outside. Tomorrow morning will start in the double digits with Seoul at 11 degrees, Jeju at 17 degrees. Daily highs move up to 19 to 22 degrees all over the country. Another round of rain is expected in the center areas, the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island between Friday night and Saturday morning. After the rain, it will get cold again. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That ends our evening newscast for this Thursday, October 30th. From all of us at the Newscenter here in Seoul, thank you for watching.
to set the facts straight. Get Korea right.
다음 중 한국의 전통 의상은 무엇일까요? 그렇다면 한국의 전통 의상 이름은 무엇일까요?
정답은 한복입니다. 안녕하세요. 방크 청년연구원 이정우입니다. 한국 드라마와 한국 영화가 한류 팬들에게 사랑받으면서 한국 전통 의상인 한복도 주목받고 있는데요. 한국 문화 콘텐츠가 지구촌 곳곳에서 인기를 누리면서 한국과 관련된 잘못된 정보도 확산되고 있습니다. 그중에는 한복에 관한 오류 정보도 있더라고요. 제가 여러분께 한복에 대해 제대로 알려드릴게요. 곡선과 직선이 조화롭게 이루어진 한복은 단아함과 우아함이 살아있는 한국 전통 의상입니다. 또한 1600년간 이어진 고유 한복은 세계에서 제일 길며 그것은 고구려 고분 벽화와 신라 백제 유물로도 확인이 됩니다. 한국인의 정체성과 역사가 담긴 한국의 소중한 문화유산이라 할 수 있죠. 한국 바로 알리기 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences.
Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with
this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. Busan, Lair the Peak.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. South Korean President Lee Jae Myung has now met with U.S. President Donald Trump, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, and is preparing for talks with China's Xi Jinping on Saturday. The U.S.-China summit held Thursday delivered real outcomes. It delivered lower tariffs imposed due to illicit fentanyl exports to the U.S. and a pause on China's export controls for rare earth metals. But they sidestepped a sensitive issue on Taiwan entirely. Washington, meanwhile, has approved Seoul's push for nuclear-powered submarines, a move certain to raise alarms over in Beijing. As economic deals and security signals collide, where does Seoul stand and how are the big powers recalibrating? For answers to this, we connect to Bong Young-sik, research fellow at the Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies. A big welcome. And also joining us is Joel Atkinson, professor at the Graduate School of International and Area Studies at Hanbok University of Foreign Studies. Good to see you, Professor.
Yeah, nice to be with you.
So let's begin our discussion with Dr. Bong with the U.S.-China summit that was held earlier today. So this summit came after weeks of tension and with high expectations, of course. So Presidents Trump and Xi met face-to-face for the first time in over a year. I wonder, how was your evaluation of the overall tone and of the meeting?
Well, the Xi Jinping-Donald Trump meeting was highly anticipated as the meeting between the two leaders took place for the first time in more than 6 years. And because it was made in the middle of ongoing trade disputes and negotiations with extremely high levels of tariffs on both sides, the speculation was that the leaders might be able to come up with some groundbreaking agreements to put an end to any substantial aspects of the tariff issues. But the outcome of the summit meeting between Trump and Xi once again revealed how difficult for both sides to come up with any groundbreaking and conclusive, conclusion on the tariff negotiations. What we have witnessed is another agreement, exchange of pauses or temporary measures for China. Agreeing on strengthening its law enforcement and investigation about the drug cartel with the fentanyl going into the United States and open its domestic market for the soybean import from the United States. And the extension of the pause on the export control of the rare earth produced by the Chinese industries. The United States agreed not to impose additional 100% tax on China and postpone the investigation in accordance with the Trade Act Article 301 on China, and a 10% reduction on the overall U.S. tariff on China, because 20% of the 145% tariff levied by United States and China is directly related with China's involvement in the fentanyl inflow into the United States. So once again, both leaders sidestep important and critical issues, especially the groundbreaking agreement on the issues related to bilateral tariffs. But at least both leaders agree on keeping all the matters under control so that the worst case scenario would not be materialized.
Right. So it was kind of a difficult situation to come up with a very breakthrough agreement, but there still were outcomes that Dr. Bong has kindly mentioned for us. So I want to ask Professor Atkinson too, then what stood out for you the most in terms of strategic messaging?
Yes, well, I certainly agree with Dr. Bong. It was more of a pause or a mini truce than a final settlement. And what really stood out for me, I was a bit surprised to see, was that the Section 301 trade remedy measures on Chinese shipping may be reduced or even dropped. I had assumed that those measures were central to the plan to reduce the dominance of Chinese shipping. But if that news is correct, then it turns out that that was negotiable. But anyway, at the end of the day, we have even with the carve-outs and exceptions, there's still a 47% tariff rate on China, which is much higher than it was before and higher than the 15% on South Korea. So, fundamentally, the major issues haven't been resolved.
Right. So even though both sides seem to have had some concessions, a big breakthrough wasn't really reachable. But one topic that was noticeably absent from the agenda was Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, despite its status as a core security concern for both sides. Professor, why do you think it was left off the table, and what does that omission actually can tell us about the current state of relations?
Well, Trump had, in the way that he does, Trump had indicated that Taiwan might be brought up, and that sparked, rounds of speculation that he would maybe trade Taiwan away as a bargaining chip. Obviously, a horrifying prospect for the 23 million people of Taiwan. My guess is Trump's people made it clear to the Chinese side that it should be off the agenda, and I think what it shows us is that for all the talk of Trump's isolationism, Washington has not substantively distanced itself from Taiwan. And Trump, so far, hasn't been kind of willing to trade Taiwan away in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Now, building on this, Dr. Bong, so how might these results of the U.S.-China summit influence the broader international community? What kind of responses would you expect?
Well, the international community will be staying in the wait-and-see mode because, as I explained, that the summit meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump failed to produce any groundbreaking closures on the ongoing trade dispute between the two superpowers and major economies in the world. So the world has been, feeling the cumulative fatigue about just a repetition of the temporary pauses decided by the Trump administration of the United States. So not knowing when such an uncertain economic situations in the world based upon threat or imposition of tariffs for many different reasons, including political and security reasons. And when the China-U.S. trade dispute will be ended, continue to provide great deal of uncertainties and instability. So major corporations and national economies will be, staying on the holding pattern without being able to make any long-term and major investment and employment decisions for a while. So the major issue is how long the United States and China can play this game. United States is extremely vulnerable because its consumer goods are heavily dependent upon Chinese manufacturers in the market. So the critical timing would be, Christmas season, when the U.S. household will be celebrating the holidays with exchange of gifts among themselves. Compared to Europeans, American consumers spend 2 times more money in their daily lives, and compared to Chinese, Americans spend 3 times more money for their daily lives. So unless the American households will be far more frugal and measured in their spendings, the U.S. economy remains quite vulnerable to China because a lot of consumer goods are still manufactured inside China. So that is a vulnerable weak points for the Trump administration to be able to continue this, brinkmanship tariff policy toward China in the long run. And China knows this vulnerability of the United States. So China is playing its waiting game while continually reducing its dependence upon China's export to the U.S. market, which Chinese government consciously reduced since the first administration of the Trump government, after China was hit by heavy tariffs, especially on its agricultural products. So China has transformed the attribute of its national economy, not really critically dependent upon export, but increasingly dependent upon domestic market.
Right. So as you said, we have like around 2 months until Christmas season. So we'll have to wait and see and keep close eyes on the developments between the two countries until then. But as for now, let's shift a little bit to Seoul, Washington summit that was held yesterday. So Dr. Bong, I wonder, what was your biggest takeaway from their second bilateral?
Well, the biggest takeaway or the key word must be what is on everybody's mind: nuclear propelled submarine. As the president of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, clearly explained in his opening remark in his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, South Korea never asked United States to supply nuclear missiles to be topped in any submarines operated by the South Korean Navy. What South Korean president asked for from the United States government and the military is a supply of nuclear fuel to upgrade its submarines, which is based upon diesel engines. Because those diesel submarines are very slow and ineffective, making a lot of noises. They are not well suited to monitor the activities of the submarines of Chinese Navy and the North Korean submarines in the Yellow Sea. So President Lee Jae Myung reiterated the request for the U.S. support for the nuclear-fueled submarines. But Trump administration, to the surprise of everyone, really positively accepted and eventually endorsed the idea. So South Korean military government is going to be in official negotiations with the U.S. counterparts about construction of nuclear-propelled submarines by South Korean shipbuilding industry. But we have to wait and see whether such remarks made by U.S. President Donald Trump that he has authorized the construction of the nuclear-propelled submarines by South Korea is whether official stance of the U.S. government and military, or it's kind of an offhand remark by President himself.
Right. That was a very eye-catching topic, the nuclear submarine fuel issue. We will return to that just in a while. But before that, President Lee actually emphasized modernizing the alliance into a future-oriented strategic partnership. Professor Atkinson, do you see any tangible process in how the alliance language is evolving between the two countries?
Yeah, well, I think for President Lee, modernization of the alliance means getting cooperation and support from Washington to bolster Korea's military self-reliance and those potential nuclear-propelled submarines. That's one part of that. It's also facilitating dialogue with North Korea and managing the alliance in a way that facilitates dialogue with North Korea. And it means avoiding entanglement in the US's efforts to deter China. Lee also wants to leverage the alliance into overseas, what they call overseas economic expansion opportunities for Korean companies. It's still early, but I think President Lee will be happy with the way things are going. Those economic opportunities are there. The military cooperation is increasing in terms of submarines and other technology. Trump is loudly and publicly willing to talk with Pyongyang. And South Korea has not yet been pressed to take steps that will really damage relations with Beijing. As for the Trump side, it's not really clear for them if they have a kind of a unified answer themselves about what they're trying to achieve through modernizing the alliance. But by all accounts, they seem to be also happy with the direction things are going.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's return back to the nuclear submarine fuel issue. So President Lee formally requested for Washington's approval, and a day after, President Trump publicly approved the construction of South Korea's first nuclear-powered submarine. Professor Atkinson, now the question is, how would Beijing interpret this latest move?
Yes, well, that was certainly the biggest surprise. I think it will take a while for Beijing to process that surprise, that information, and decide what line it's going to take. Given how Beijing talks about AUKUS, the AUKUS agreement to provide nuclear submarines to Australia, Beijing may, criticize it as the US engaging in nuclear proliferation. But on the other hand, it may decide not to make a major issue of it. Nuclear submarines, nuclear propulsion is very difficult. They take time. Trump saying that those subs will be built in America, in the Hanwha, the shipyards there, which may be more expensive than Korea is willing to pay. So there are many obstacles and details that need to be worked out. And I would suspect even if the subs get built, Xi Jinping appears very confident that the overall trends are moving in his direction. And, whatever military hardware South Korea has is not going to really change the regional power balance.
Right. But the fact that President Lee actually pointed out, it's aimed to track North Korean and Chinese ships. And we are awaiting a summit. South Korea's President Lee Jae Myung is going to have a summit with President Xi on Saturday. So with this situation, how do you think the latest announcement could influence the bilateral summit?
Yeah, well, I will see. I don't think the subs will be a major issue yet. I think more what's going to happen is this kind of cooperative tone that Trump and Xi Jinping have set. That cooperative tone will, because of that, President Lee will be feeling a little bit less pressure. He'll be finding it a bit easier to satisfy both at the same time. And there'll be other things, like Trump brought up the prospect of maybe selling more advanced NVIDIA semiconductor chips to China. That will probably encourage South Korea to try to push a bit further to promote its semiconductor exports to China. And in the end, I think for President Lee, an important focus is trying to foster those US talks with North Korea. And I would suspect Xi Jinping is going to be happy to kind of go along with that and encourage those efforts.
So this one-on-one could reveal how South Korea would plan to balance growing pressure from both sides. Now, before we conclude, let's finish off with the Seoul Tokyo summit that just wrapped up a couple hours ago. President Lee and Prime Minister Takaichi emphasized future-oriented ties and regional cooperation. Dr. Bong, what message did they send, and how might that reshape bilateral relations moving forward?
The most important outcome coming out of this summit meeting between new Prime Minister of Japan and President Lee Jae Myung of South Korea is their commitment to continue the shuttle diplomacy at the highest level of the government, which was resuscitated between the former Prime Minister of Japan, Ishiba, and President Lee Jae Myung. Despite the concern that Lee Jae Myung government would be very critical toward the Japanese government because of its view on territorial and historical views, Lee Jae Myung surprisingly took very open-minded approach to the Ishiba government, confirming that his government would, endorse and respect controversial agreements forged by his conservative predecessors, like the 2015 joint declaration on the conclusion of the sex slavery issue between South Korea and Japan, and 2022 decision by the Yoon Suk-yeol government to settle the forced labor legal issues with a third-party compensation. So those efforts by the Lee Jae Myung government helped restore the shuttle diplomacy between Seoul and Tokyo. And this summit meeting between Takaichi and President Lee Jae Myung confirmed that both sides are committed to continuing this effort.
Right, so we will be able to look forward to a brighter alliance between the two sides. And with the summits, all of the three summits being concluded, we will be watching how these signals could evolve into actual shifts in regional alignment as well. But as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Bong.
Thank you.
And Professor Atkinson, we really appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.